The rifle shot cracked through the morning air like thunder, and the bullet tore past the woman lying face down in the mud, missing her ear by inches. Marcus Kane's boot connected with her back, driving her deeper into the black puddle. "Get down, you stupid wannabe! This ain't no place for little girls playing soldier." Laughter erupted from the death squad, 5 elite snipers circling their prey like wolves. Derek Mason, the lead instructor clutching his clipboard, shook his head in disgust. 5'2", 90 pounds soaking wet. What a joke. Get her out of here before someone gets hurt. Rachel Thompson remained motionless in the mud, eyes closed, dirt caking her face. Her small fingers trembled as they gripped the rifle someone had sabotaged. The barrel bent just enough to make accurate shooting impossible. She didn't resist when Kane yanked the weapon from her hands and threw it into the dirt. $20 says she quits before lunch, a voice called out. "Make it 50, I bet she cries first," another responded. The morning sun at Fort Bragg's Special Operations Sniper Course cast long shadows across the qualification range, where only 2% of candidates would ever pass. But in the brief silence between the cruel laughter, a detail flashed by unnoticed. The way her fingers had traced the damaged barrel, measuring the deviation to the millimeter with practiced precision. In 47 minutes, this seemingly insignificant moment would determine the fate of 23 people. The mockery had started the moment Rachel arrived at 0430 hours that morning. While other candidates rolled up in lifted trucks plastered with unit stickers, she'd climbed out of a beat-up Honda Civic with a cracked windshield. Her gear looked like surplus store regex, a faded woodland camo uniform, at least 2 sizes too big, boots with separated soles held together with duct tape, and a range bag that might have been new during Vietnam. If this story about a woman being crushed in the mud makes your blood boil, take a quick second to hit that like button and subscribe. It really means the world to me. For those who want to support more stories about injustice and fate reversals like this one, there's a thanks button below. Now let's see how Rachel responds to this brutal humiliation. The morning had begun 3 hours earlier in the barracks. Rachel woke before her alarm, her body clock precise after years of conditioning. In the darkness, she folded her thin blanket with military corners so sharp they could cut paper. The other female candidates, all 3 of them, were still asleep, exhausted from yesterday's preliminary fitness test. She dressed silently, each movement economical. As she pulled on her worn uniform top, moonlight from the window caught something on her right forearm, a long scar running from wrist to elbow, pale against her tanned skin. Her fingers unconsciously traced it before she yanked the sleeve down. A flash of memory intruded. Sand, blood, the weight of a rifle, someone whispering, "7, take the shot." The crack of gunfire. "Target down, moving to next position." She shook her head, banishing the images, and carefully wrapped her left knee, an old injury that ached in the morning humidity. By 0500 hours, Rachel sat alone in the furthest corner of the mess hall, her back to the wall, eyes tracking every entrance and exit. The coffee was terrible, the eggs worse, but she ate mechanically, fueling her body for what was coming. That's when the death squad made their entrance. Marcus Kane led them like he owned the place, 6 feet 4 inches of muscle and arrogance, his shaved head gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Behind him came Jake Hawk Harrison with his perpetual sneer, Tommy Chen spinning a combat knife between his fingers, Rico Valdez cracking his knuckles, and Brad Stevens bringing up the rear, quieter than the others, but no less intimidating. They commanded the center table, their voices filling the space with stories of confirmed kills and impossible shots. Elena Rodriguez, the only other female sniper candidate who'd shown promise, tried to approach Rachel's table with her tray. "Don't even think about it," Kane's voice cut through the chatter. "Losers sit alone, winners sit with winners." Elena hesitated, then reluctantly joined another table, shooting Rachel an apologetic glance. Rachel didn't react. She continued eating, but her peripheral vision caught Kane's approach. He loomed over her table, his shadow falling across her tray. "Well, well, look what crawled out of the recruitment office. You lost, sweetheart? Maul's that way." She looked up, meeting his eyes briefly before returning to her food. Something in that glance made Kane pause. Not defiance exactly, but an absence of fear that didn't fit with her mousy appearance. "I'm talking to you, recruit." He slammed his palm on the table, making her juice cup jump. Still, she didn't flinch. Instead, she calmly reached out and steadied the cup, then took another bite of eggs. The calculated disrespect infuriated him. "You deaf as well as dumb?" He grabbed her tray and flipped it, sending scrambled eggs and coffee cascading onto her uniform. The mess hall erupted in laughter and applause. Rachel sat perfectly still for 3 seconds. Then she stood, picked up the tray, and walked to the cleanup station. No hurry, no anger, just mechanical efficiency. As she passed the death squad's table, her eyes swept across their position, and Sergeant Blake, observing from the doorway, noticed something odd. She'd automatically calculated firing angles from her seat to the windows. Muscle memory. 0530 hours found them walking to the range. Instructor Derek Mason strutted at the front of the 43 candidates, his voice carrying across the morning air. Today's initial qual, 1,000-yard shots with 15-knot crosswinds. Half of you won't make it past lunch. The other half will wish they hadn't. Kane deliberately bumped into Rachel, sending her stumbling. His coffee cup somehow tipped, splashing across her range bag. "Oops, Butterfingers." More laughter from his squad. Rachel steadied herself and kept walking. She didn't shake the bag or try to salvage her gear. She simply tilted it slightly, letting the coffee drain out the bottom corner, her face expressionless. That's when Blake noticed her gait, too quiet for a civilian, heel-to-toe roll that made almost no sound on the gravel. At 0600 hours, they reached the range for check-in. The armorer, a grizzled master sergeant named Cooper, handed out rifle assignments with all the enthusiasm of someone dispensing prison sentences. The death squad got primo equipment, new Remington 700s with Night Force scopes. Rachel got serial number 13, a Barrett M82 that looked like it had survived Iraq, Afghanistan, and possibly Korea. "Barrel's got some wear," Cooper understated, knowing full well the rifle was barely serviceable. "Scope might need adjustment." Translation: good luck hitting the broadside of a barn. Her ammunition allocation was equally suspect. Match grade rounds, sure, but from 3 different lots with varying powder loads. Any real sniper would know this meant constant adjustments between shots, nearly impossible to maintain consistency. "Station 13, Mason announced with barely concealed glee. "Far right. The worst position on the range, full sun in her face by mid-morning, crosswinds amplified by the gap in the berms, and a concrete barrier that would trap her brass and powder residue, creating a personal gas cloud with every shot." Rachel accepted it all without comment. She carried her rifle to the station and began her setup. That's when the first mini-surprise occurred. Despite the equipment sabotage, she methodically sorted each round by weight, using nothing but her hands to detect the slight differences. Elena, setting up at Station 12, watched in fascination as Rachel arranged them in specific order. "Hey, Princess, nail salon's that way," Kane called out, generating another wave of laughter. "Maybe they can fix those broke-ass fingernails while you're at it." The warm-up was set for 100 yards, child's play for any trained shooter. Kane went first, naturally. He made a show of his preparation, adjusting his scope with theatrical precision, controlling his breathing loudly enough for everyone to hear. 10 shots, 10 bullseyes. He stood up, arms raised like a prize fighter. "That's how it's done, ladies and gentlemen. Death Squad representing." High fives all around, Mason nodding approval. Rachel's turn. She took 3 full minutes adjusting her decrepit scope, ignoring the snickers and comments. When she finally fired, the results seemed to confirm everyone's assumptions. 7 hits out of 10, scattered across the target. But Blake frowned, pulling out his spotting scope for a closer look. The 7 hits weren't scattered at all. They were all through the same hole, slightly off-center. The 3 misses had been wild, way off target. He walked down range during the ceasefire to inspect. He muttered. The 3 missed shots showed keyholing. The bullets had tumbled into flight. Bad ammunition, not bad shooting. And she'd somehow identified which rounds were defective and grouped them at the end. By 0700 hours, they'd moved to the 500-yard qualification. The wind had picked up to 20 knots with unpredictable gusts. This was where real skills emerged. Kane's group made sure to conduct loud conversations whenever Rachel was in her shooting position. "So I told the Haji, you can run, but you'll just die tired." Jake's story carried clearly across the range. 1 shot, 900 meters, dude's head just... Rachel was about to squeeze the trigger when Mason accidentally kicked her rifle. Oops, sorry recruit, Butterfingers must be contagious. The rifle jerked, her shot went wide, and she had to start her breathing cycle all over again. She began the tedious process of re-zeroing her scope. 5 minutes gone, 9 shots remaining, 8 minutes left on the clock. The death squad exchanged smirks. During her next attempt, Tommy Chen casually loosened her bipod screws while pretending to adjust his own equipment. Brad stumbled past her position, kicking sand into her face just as she was about to fire. Rico somehow managed to spill water on her shooting mat, creating a muddy mess. Despite the sabotage, Rachel scored 8 out of 10 hits. Kane's fury was palpable. He'd only managed 7 in the same conditions, even with perfect equipment and no interference. 800 hours brought an unexpected development. Rachel mentioned to herself while calculating a shot, crosswind at 2.3 mils, decreasing to 1.8. The terminology was too precise, too technical for someone with her supposed background. Elena overhead and whispered to Blake, "She's not breathing like a rookie either. 4-2-4-2 pattern. That's advanced tactical breathing." That's when Colonel Harrison arrived. The commanding officer of the sniper school rarely observed initial qualifications, but something had drawn him out this morning. He took position in the tower, binoculars trained on the range. Kane, sensing an opportunity to impress, announced a special challenge to the group. "All right, ladies, moving targets at 750. Loser cleans the entire armory for a month. Who's got the balls?" He looked directly at Rachel. "How about it, princess, unless you're scared of a little competition?" Rachel looked up from her rifle. For the first time all morning, she spoke. "Terms?" Her voice was lower than expected, steady. Kane blinked, momentarily thrown off by her acceptance. 5 targets, 30 seconds, standard silhouettes. He grinned. "Ladies first?" "Age before beauty," she replied quietly, generating surprised chuckles from some candidates. Kane's face reddened. He took position with exaggerated confidence, making sure the colonel could see his form. The targets began their lateral movement, moderate speed, predictable pattern. He fired rapidly, trusting his instincts and superior equipment. 4 hits out of 5. He jumped up, pumping his fist. "Beat that recruit!" Mason helped Rachel load her magazine, and she noticed immediately that something was wrong. The rounds were mixed, some heavy match grade, some lighter training rounds. The weight differences would throw off her trajectory calculations significantly. She looked at Mason, who smirked. "Problem, recruit?" She said nothing, but began arranging the rounds in her magazine in a specific order, heaviest to lightest. The death squad laughed. "What's wrong, princess? Trying to make them prettier?" Rachel took her position. The spotters watched through their scopes as she acquired the first target. Her body went unnaturally still. Even her breathing seemed to stop. She fired, hit, center mass. She worked the bolt with mechanical precision, already tracking the second target. The crosswind gusted suddenly, but she'd anticipated it, adjusting mid-sight picture. Second shot, second hit. By the third shot, the laughter had died. By the fourth, Kane's triumphant expression had faded. When the 5th target fell with a perfect center hit, the range was silent except for the distant clang of steel on steel. Blake checked his stopwatch. 22 seconds, 5 for 5, with mixed ammunition and sabotaged equipment. "That's impossible," someone whispered. "Not with those loads." Colonel Harrison lowered his binoculars slowly. Something about her shooting rhythm nagged at him. 7-7-3. Where had he seen that pattern before? Rachel adjusted her tactical equipment in her range bag, pulling out what looked like standard gear, but was actually military-grade communications technology. The smartphone featured satellite connectivity that could maintain secure data transmission even in the most hostile operational environments. The ruggedized tablet she used for ballistic calculations had been designed for battlefield conditions, its reinforced screen capable of withstanding extreme temperatures and impacts that would destroy civilian electronics. She entered her data quickly, then stowed the devices. By 0900 hours, the psychological warfare had escalated to physical intimidation. Kane cornered Rachel at the equipment shed during a break. "Accidents happen on ranges, sweetheart. Would be a real shame if someone got hurt because they didn't know their place." Jake and Tommy flanked her, body checking her against the wall. Rachel didn't flinch, but her eyes automatically mapped exits. Door 12 feet, window 8 feet. Gap between Jake and Tommy, approximately 18 inches. "You listening to me?" Kane grabbed her right wrist, his thumb pressing into the scar tissue. "What's this? Try to kill yourself when you realized you'll never be good enough?" For the first time, something flickered in Rachel's eyes. Not fear, something colder. She looked directly at Kane, and he unconsciously took a half step back. Then the moment passed, and she was just a small woman surrounded by large men again. "I need to clean my rifle," she said quietly. "Yeah, you do that." Kane released her wrist. "Clean it real good. Might be the last time you touch one." Inside the armory, Rachel disassembled her rifle with practiced efficiency. Even surrounded by hostile men, her hands never shook. The breakdown took exactly 12 seconds. She didn't hurry, didn't fumble, just worked with mechanical precision that spoke of thousands of repetitions. Tommy noticed it first. "Yo, she's pretty fast with that." "So what?" Rico scoffed. "My girl can break down her makeup kit fast too." But Jake was frowning. "No, look at her trigger finger. See how she's indexed it along the receiver? That's not civilian training." By 0930, Colonel Harrison had quietly initiated a background check on Rachel Thompson. The results came back suspiciously clean. Too clean. Born in Ohio, unremarkable school records, 2 years of community college, worked at a sporting goods store. It was a legend, a well-crafted one, but a legend nonetheless. He pulled Blake aside. "That recruit Thompson, something familiar about her." "Sir?" "Keep an eye on her, and I want the video from today's shooting, all of it." The morning's final evolution was announced. Night navigation exercise through the old training area. Solo routes, no partners, scheduled for 1,800 hours. Rachel received her map and immediately noticed her route went through Training Area 7, abandoned since the 60s, full of defunct bunkers and storage facilities. The death squad volunteered to set up checkpoints. Mason approved with a knowing smile. Elena tried to warn Rachel during lunch. "Listen, I know we're not supposed to talk, but that route they gave you, there's an old fallout shelter at grid 372. The door still works. If someone wanted to—" "I know," Rachel said quietly, surprising Elena. "Thank you." "You know, then why aren't you saying something?" Rachel looked at her steadily. "Because sometimes the trap catches the hunter." 1,000 hours brought the shooting under duress test. Candidates had to run 400 meters in full gear, then engage targets within 60 seconds while their heart rates were still elevated. Most struggled to control their breathing, their shots wild as their bodies demanded oxygen. Kane finished his run and dropped prone, his chest heaving. The range safety officer checked his vitals. Heart rate 120, respiratory rate 28. It took him 90 seconds to get his first shot off. Rachel finished her run and assumed her shooting position. The RSO frowned at his monitor. "Equipment malfunction. No way her heart rate's 45. Blake checked the backup monitor. Same reading. He watched as Rachel's breathing immediately fell into a controlled pattern. She fired her first shot 30 seconds after finishing the run. Heart rate never exceeded 50. "That's not natural," Mason muttered. "Nobody recovers that fast." But Colonel Harrison, watching from the tower, had seen it before. Combat veterans who'd learned to control their autonomic responses, who could drop their heart rates on command. It took years of training and usually came with a price. Experiences that forced you to master your body or die. The false identity seed was planted during the lunch break. Rico accidentally left an old Army Times near Rachel's seat. The headline read, "Female Guard Wins All Army Marksmanship Competition." The photo showed a woman who could have been Rachel from a distance. Same height, similar build. The name was Rebecca Thompson. "Hey, that's you!" Tommy exclaimed with fake surprise. "Rachel, Rebecca, close enough, right?" Rachel glanced at the paper without picking it up. "Not me." "Come on, don't be modest," Jake pressed. "Says here she was a guard at Fort Campbell. That's where you were, right?" "I've never been to Fort Campbell." Her voice was flat, uninterested. She stood and left, abandoning her unfinished lunch. Mason grabbed the paper, studying it intently. "Well, boys, looks like our mystery is solved. Just another weekend warrior trying to play with the big boys." But Harrison wasn't buying it. He made another call, this time to a friend at Fort Campbell. Pull the records on Rebecca Thompson, marksmanship winner from 2018. What do you mean she's still there? Active duty? Watching Rachel navigate through her day was like observing a ghost trying to pretend it was human. She made all the right mistakes, fumbling with equipment she'd never touched before, asking basic questions about range procedures, maintaining the facade of inexperience. But the details betrayed her. The way she automatically checked corners when entering buildings, how she never sat with her back exposed, the unconscious way her trigger finger indexed along any straight edge. Have you ever been in a situation where your abilities were dismissed just because of prejudice? When you knew you could do something, but no one would give you the chance? Share your story in the comments below. And now, as darkness begins to fall over Fort Bragg, 1,400 hours brought advanced ballistics testing. The candidates had to calculate complex shots accounting for wind, elevation, humidity, barometric pressure, and even the Coriolis effect. Most pulled out calculators and reference cards, frantically computing solutions. Rachel wrote her solutions directly on the worksheet. No calculator, no references. Just neat rows of equations that included corrections. Most snipers didn't learn until advanced school. When she factored in the Magnus effect on spindrift, Blake couldn't stay quiet. "Where did you learn that formula?" She looked up, seeming to realize her mistake. "I read it in a book." "What book?" Mason demanded. "That's classified information." "I don't remember the title." She lowered her eyes, playing flustered. "I read a lot." But the damage was done. Her formula included a correction factor that had only been developed 3 years ago by SOCOM's Advanced Marksmanship Unit. No civilian book would have it. The Death Squad's sabotage reached new heights by 1,500 hours. They'd rigged her night vision equipment with dead batteries, loosened the mount on her rifle scope, and planted fake evidence in her locker. Pages from sniper manuals with notes in the margins, designed to look like she'd been cheating. The plan was simple. Get her lost in the training area after dark, lock her in the old bunker, then discover the evidence. She'd be disqualified for cheating and going off course. Clean, efficient, cruel. But they didn't count on Brad Stevens developing a conscience. Brad had been quiet all day, participating just enough to avoid Kane's suspicion. But something about the escalating cruelty bothered him. Maybe it was the way Rachel never complained, never begged, just endured it all with quiet dignity. Or maybe it was the memory of his younger brother, dead at 19 from a hazing incident gone wrong. He found her during the afternoon break, checking her equipment in a quiet corner. "Listen, I don't have much time. Tonight, at Checkpoint 3, there's an old bunker. They're planning to—" "I know." Her quiet response stopped him cold. "You know? Then why are you going along with it?" She looked at him with those unnaturally calm eyes. "Because sometimes you have to enter the trap to spring it, but thank you. Your brother would be proud." Brad went white. "How do you know about my brother?" "The same way I know you've been fighting Kane's influence all week. The same way I know you keep his picture in your left chest pocket. Some things you can't hide from someone who's trained to observe." She handed him something, his backup flashlight. "You'll want to stay with the main group tonight. All of them." At 1,600 hours, during vehicle training, the Death Squad made their most dangerous move yet. Someone had cut Rachel's brake lines, not completely, just enough to fail under pressure. The training required driving the course at speed, making sharp turns and sudden stops. Rachel performed her standard vehicle inspection, her hands running along every accessible component. When she reached the brake lines, her fingers paused for just a moment. Then she continued as if nothing was wrong. She completed the course using engine braking and the emergency brake, never touching the main brakes once. To observers, it looked like poor technique. Only Blake noticed she'd identified the sabotage and adapted instantly. "How?" Kane was beside himself. "How does she keep avoiding everything?" But the tell came from an unexpected source. Master Sergeant Williams, the oldest instructor at the school, had been walking past the vehicle course using his distinctive limping gait, a souvenir from Fallujah. He stopped dead when he saw Rachel exit the vehicle. Her stance, the way she positioned her feet, the angle of her shoulders. He'd seen it before, years ago, in a place that didn't officially exist. used by an operator who didn't officially exist. "No," he whispered. "Can't be. She's dead. They told us she was dead." He turned and hurried away before anyone could question him, but Harrison caught the reaction. Another piece of the puzzle. 1,700 hours. Final preparations. Rachel checked and rechecked her equipment, finding and fixing each act of sabotage with methodical precision. She packed extra water, MREs, a first aid kit, and several items that seemed odd for a simple navigation exercise. Chemical lights, paracord, a small pry bar. Elena slipped her a GPS beacon. "Just in case, I've got a bad feeling about tonight." "Keep it." Rachel pressed it back into her hands. "But thank you. Stay close to Brad Stevens tonight. He's going to need a witness." "A witness for what?" Rachel just gave her that ghostly hint of a smile and moved away. In the operations center, Captain Hayes from Internal Affairs was showing Harrison a classified file. The photo inside was partially redacted, showing a woman in combat gear, face obscured by shadows and tactical paint. Phantom 7, MIA, presumed KIA, October 2019. One of our best. 127 confirmed kills in 3 years. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because someone flagged her biometrics as a possible match with your recruit Thompson. Same height, same build, similar movement patterns. But it's impossible. Phantom 7 died in an ambush outside Kandahar. Entire convoy destroyed. No survivors." Harrison studied the photo. Something about the stance. "Get me her full jacket, everything you have." "Sir, that's need to know." "Captain, I've got a feeling I need to know. Make it happen." 1,800 hours. The navigation exercise began with 43 candidates spreading out across the training area. Rachel entered the woods alone, her movements silent despite the gathering darkness. She wasn't following the marked route. Instead, she paralleled it, staying in the shadows. The death squad waited at checkpoint 3, their ambush prepared. The old bunker's steel door stood open, inviting. They'd disabled her night vision, sabotaged her compass, and made sure she'd have to pass this way. "Where is she?" Jake checked his watch. "She should have been here 20 minutes ago." "Maybe she got lost already," Rico suggested. "That compass we gave her points 30 degrees off." But Kane wasn't buying it. Something felt wrong. The woods were too quiet, and he had the unsettling feeling they were being watched. 1,830 hours. Rachel had indeed reached checkpoint 3, but not the way they expected. She'd climbed a tree 50 meters from the bunker and was observing them through a small monocular she'd concealed in her gear. 4 men waiting, Brad notably absent. Good. He'd listened. She could have simply avoided them, completed an alternate route. But that wasn't why she was here. There were larger games in play, and sometimes you had to let the enemy think they'd won. She climbed down and approached from the expected direction, making just enough noise to alert them. "Checkpoint 3 for Thompson." They emerged from the shadows like wolves, surrounding her quickly. Jake grabbed her arms while Rico took her rifle. Kane's grin was predatory in the moonlight. "Well, well, right on time, princess. End of the line." "I need to check in at the checkpoint," she said calmly, "for my navigation card." "Oh, you'll check in all right." Tommy opened the bunker door, the rusty hinges screaming. "In there. We'll let you out in the morning." "Maybe." They forced her toward the entrance. Rachel memorized every detail, the locking mechanism, the hinges, the thickness of the door. As they shoved her inside, she caught Kane's wrist for just a moment. 6 hours, she said quietly. "You might want to stay together. All of you." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just advice." She stepped into the darkness willingly. Tick-tock. The door slammed shut, the locking bar dropping into place with a solid clang. Inside, absolute darkness and the smell of 60 years of decay. The death squad high-fived outside, already composing their alibi. 1,845 hours. Rachel waited exactly 60 seconds, listening to them move away. Then she went to work. The emergency supplies she'd noticed earlier were still there, ancient but serviceable. She assembled makeshift tools in complete darkness, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. The lock was old, simple by modern standards. Someone trained in Sear School would know a dozen ways to defeat it. She chose the quietest method, working the pins with improvised picks fashioned from wire she'd found. Outside, the death squad was setting up their story. They'd claim she never showed up at the checkpoint, must have gotten lost. The evidence in her locker would be discovered during the search. Mason would regretfully recommend immediate discharge, 1,900 hours. The first explosion shattered the night. Not a training charge, but live ordnance. The sound of automatic weapons followed, the distinctive chatter of AK-47s. Not from the range, from the base perimeter, Sector 7. The death squad froze in disbelief. This wasn't part of any exercise. What the hell? Tommy's voice cracked. More explosions. The base sirens began wailing. FP-Con Delta, the highest threat level. This was real. Kane's radio crackled to life. All personnel to defensive positions. This is not a drill. Repeat, not a drill. We have multiple hostiles inside the wire. They looked at each other in growing horror. They were 2 miles from the main base, unarmed except for their navigation equipment, and they just locked their only real soldier in a bunker with no way to communicate. 1915. Reports flooded the emergency channels. 12 to 15 hostiles had breached the perimeter, heading for the ammunition depot. Base security was pinned down. 3 guards confirmed KIA. The attackers were well-trained, well-equipped, and had inside knowledge of patrol routes. Colonel Harrison was in the Tactical Operations Center. "Where are my snipers?" "Sir, Alpha and Bravo teams are at the main range for night quals. 20 minutes minimum to get them here." "What about the navigation exercise?" 43 candidates scattered across Training Area 7, none armed with live ammunition. Harrison's face went white. His candidates were sitting ducks. Back at the bunker, Jake was frantically working the lock. His hands shook so badly he couldn't manage the mechanism. Come on, come on." "She's probably passed out from panic anyway," Rico said, but his voice lacked conviction. They could hear the gunfire getting closer. "Shut up and help me!" Kane shoved Jake aside, yanking at the bar. It wouldn't budge. That's when they heard it, a metallic click from inside the bunker. The door swung open slowly, and Rachel stepped out into the moonlight. Calm, collected. Her makeshift lockpick still in her hand. The death squad stared in shock. She surveyed them with those flat, emotionless eyes, then asked quietly, "Where's the nearest weapons cache?" Kane's mouth worked soundlessly. Finally he managed, "What?" "Weapons cache, emergency arms room. Every training area has one." Her voice had changed. Lower, commanding. "Kane, status report, now." Something in her tone triggered an automatic response. 12 to 15 tangos, Sector 7, moving toward the ammo depot. Base security engaged and pinned. She was already moving, and they found themselves following without question. Rachel led them through the woods at a pace that should have been impossible in the dark, especially with sabotaged equipment. But she moved like the darkness was her element, avoiding obstacles they didn't see until they'd passed them. Can you spot the strange detail? Why was Rachel so calm when they locked her up? And that sound she just identified in the bunker? Those weren't regular training explosives. Share this with your friends and watch from minute 15:30. Everything is about to completely reverse. Just 1925. They reached Emergency Arms Room 7, a nondescript concrete building that most candidates didn't even know existed. The sergeant on duty started to protest. "No authorization for..." Rachel stepped into the light. "Code 77 Alpha." The sergeant's eyes widened. He looked at her face, then at something on his computer screen, then back at her. Without another word, he opened the arms room. Rachel went straight to a specific case, bypassing all the modern rifles. Inside was a Macmillan TACE-338, serial number PS-007. The death squad watched her check the weapon with movements so practiced they seemed like a dance. "That's..." Jake's voice failed him. "That's restricted to Tier 1 operators." She loaded specific ammunition, match grade, 338 Lapua Magnum with a particular lot number. Her hands moved independently, muscle memory taking over, while her mind calculated wind speeds, distances, angles. "Stay here," she ordered. "Guard the armory. No one gets these weapons except confirmed friendlies." "You can't go alone," Rico protested, but she was already gone, melting into the darkness with her rifle and kit. The death squad looked at each other, suddenly realizing they'd just taken orders from the woman they'd tormented all day. And it had felt completely natural. 1935. Rachel reached Building 31, the administrative center that offered the best vantage point over Sector 7. She scaled the maintenance ladder one-handed, rifle slung, moving with an economy of motion that spoke of countless similar climbs. The roof was graveled, perfect for a shooting position. She had clear lines of sight to the tree line where muzzle flashes marked enemy positions. 750 yards to the nearest hostile, wind gusting at 25 knots from the southwest, light rain beginning to fall. She found the enemy sniper first. He was good, well concealed, disciplined with his shots. He had 2 of base security's response teams pinned down, wounded men bleeding out in the open because no one could reach them. Rachel built her position in 20 seconds. No sandbags, no bipod, just her body positioned perfectly to absorb recoil. She found her natural point of aim, controlled her breathing, and entered the zone. Snipers called the bubble, where time slowed and everything except the target faded away. Distance, 823 yards. Wind, compensate 3.7 miles right. Rain, negligible effect at this range. Target, exposed ear below helmet line, 2 inches of fatal real estate. She fired between heartbeats. The suppressed rifle coughed once. 823 yards away, the hostile sniper's head snapped sideways. He slumped over his rifle, suddenly and completely dead. Rachel was already moving, displacing to a new position. Rule 1 of sniper warfare: never fire twice from the same location. The remaining hostiles hadn't heard her shot, hadn't seen her muzzle flash. Their first indication something was wrong was their sniper's sudden silence. She found the machine gun team next. They were laying down suppressing fire on the main gate, keeping reinforcements from entering. The gunner was partially exposed, confident in his cover. 791 yards. Adjust for the temperature differential over the parking lot asphalt. Lead the target 2 mils to account for his movement pattern. The gunner was mid-burst when Rachel's round took him center mass. He dropped like his strings had been cut. His assistant gunner looked around wildly, trying to spot the threat. Rachel's second shot caught him as he tried to take over the gun. In the Tactical Operations Center, Colonel Harrison watched through the security cameras. The quality wasn't great at this distance, but he could see enough. A lone figure on the roof, engaging targets with mechanical precision. "Who is that?" someone asked. Harrison pulled up another screen showing the arms room access log. Emergency issue, 1927 hours. Macmillan, TAC 338, serial number PS0007. His hands started shaking. "Sir," his aide prompted. "Get me General Morrison, priority 1, actual." He turned to Master Sergeant Williams, who just arrived. "Run the shot pattern analysis, 773 interval." Williams was already watching the feed. "Sir, that's Kandahar protocol. Only one person ever used that rhythm." "I know." Harrison's voice was tight. "But she's dead. We buried her. I was at the memorial." "Sir," Williams said slowly, "we buried someone. But we never recovered. The body, I know." Harrison watched another hostile fall to the mysterious sniper. "Pull her file, everything, classified and above." 1945. Rachel had eliminated 9 hostiles in 11 minutes. Each shot was perfect. Center nervous system hits that dropped targets instantly. She moved constantly, never giving the enemy a chance to pinpoint her location. The remaining hostiles were panicking. Their radios, which Rachel monitored through a captured earpiece, were full of frightened chatter. They'd come expecting easy targets, inside information ensuring their success. Instead, they were being hunted by a ghost. She found their commander trying to rally his men for a retreat. He was screaming into his radio, demanding extraction. 912 yards, extreme range even for her rifle. Wind shifting, rain increasing. A difficult shot. Rachel made minute adjustments, feeling more than calculating the solution. She entered that space where conscious thought ceased and instinct took over. The rifle became an extension of her will. The commander's head exploded mid-sentence. The remaining 3 hostiles broke and ran. Rachel tracked them clinically, dropping each one before they could reach the tree line. 12 targets, 12 kills. Elapsed time, 13 minutes, 47 seconds. She safed her weapon and keyed the captured radio. Sector 7 clear, dispatching recovery teams now. In the distance, she could hear helicopters approaching, the quick reaction force finally arriving. But the battle was already over. Rachel climbed down from the roof, her movements showing the first signs of fatigue. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind the familiar emptiness that followed combat. She'd forgotten how cold it felt. The death squad was still at the armory when she returned. They snapped to attention without thinking, Kane actually saluting before catching himself. Rachel ignored them, focusing on the sergeant. Weapon cleared and safed. Round count, 14 expended. Serial number PS-07, returning to inventory. The sergeant looked at his computer screen, then at her, then at the screen again. "Ma'am, this weapon is registered to—" "I know who it's registered to." She set the rifle on the counter. "Tell Colonel Harrison I'll be in his office in 20 minutes, after I change out of these wet clothes." She turned to go, then paused. The death squad was staring at her with expressions ranging from awe to terror. She studied them for a moment with those flat, dangerous eyes. "Kane," he straightened reflexively. "Report to the commandant's office at 0600. Bring your squad, all of them." She paused. "Including Stevens." Then she was gone, leaving them standing there in shock. 1955. The base was in controlled chaos. Emergency vehicles raced towards Sector 7. The quick reaction force helicopters circled, looking for targets that no longer existed. And in the Tactical Operations Center, Colonel Harrison stared at a classified file that had just been delivered. Captain Rachel Morrison, call sign Phantom 7. 127 confirmed kills over 3 operational years. Specialties: urban warfare, counter-sniper operations, high-value target elimination. The photograph was 3 years old, showing a woman in full combat gear, face partially obscured by tactical paint. But the eyes were unmistakable, those same flat, emotionless eyes that had looked at him from across a rifle range 12 hours ago. "This is impossible," he muttered. "She died in October 2019. Convoy ambush outside Kandahar. Entire unit wiped out." Master Sergeant Williams cleared his throat. "Sir, if I may, I was there for the after action. We found bodies, but it was bad, sir. Burned beyond recognition. DNA testing was inconclusive on 2 of them." "You're saying she survived?" "I'm saying someone with her exact shooting pattern just saved this base." Williams pulled up the analysis. 773 interval between shots. It's like a fingerprint, sir. No one else shoots with that rhythm. Hayes from Internal Affairs burst in. "Sir, I've been monitoring the recruit Thompson. She just returned a weapon to the arms room. Serial number PS-07. Harrison felt his world tilt. "That's Phantom 7's personal weapon." "Yes, sir. It should have been destroyed 3 years ago. But someone kept it in inventory, someone who knew she'd come back for it." The pieces were falling into place too fast. Harrison grabbed his phone. "Get me General Morrison, now." "Sir, the general is already en route. His helicopter lands in 10 minutes. Of course he was. Because General Thomas Morrison wasn't just Delta Force commander. According to the file Harrison was reading, he was also Phantom 7's emergency contact, her husband. 200 hours. The conference room in the headquarters building had been cleared of all but essential personnel. Colonel Harrison sat at one end of the table, the classified file spread before him. Captain Hayes stood by the door, ensuring no unauthorized entry. The rain outside had intensified, drumming against the windows like distant gunfire. Rachel entered exactly on time, having changed into dry ACUs. Her hair was still damp, pulled back in a regulation bun. She moved with that same eerie silence, taking a seat across from Harrison without being invited. "Captain Morrison." Harrison's voice was carefully neutral. "Or should I say Phantom 7? "Rachel Thompson, sir. That's the name on my enlistment papers." Her tone matched his, professional, giving nothing away. "Don't play games with me, Captain. I have your file right here. Every mission, every kill, every commendation, including your supposed death 3 years ago." She looked at the file without touching it. "Then you know why I'm here. Enlighten me. The attack tonight wasn't random, Colonel. Someone sold them our patrol routes, response times, security protocols. The same someone who's been selling information about our sniper school graduates to hostile forces. Harrison leaned back. That's a serious accusation. Check Derek Mason's financial records. Cryptocurrency deposits totaling $50,000 over the past 6 months. Cross-reference the dates with our graduates who've been killed in action. She pulled a thumb drive from her pocket, sliding it across the table. I've done the work for you. How long have you been investigating this? 2 years, ever since we started losing snipers at statistically impossible rates. Good operators don't just walk into ambushes. Someone was marking them. The door opened and General Morrison entered, still in flight gear. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that commanded immediate attention. His eyes found Rachel first, and something passed between them. Not affection exactly, but deep understanding. Rachel. He nodded once. Sir. She didn't stand, didn't salute. The normal military courtesies seemed suspended in this room. Morrison took a seat. Status: 12 hostiles neutralized. No friendly casualties beyond the initial breach. Mason will be in custody within the hour. She paused. The death squad performed adequately under pressure. Harrison almost choked. Adequately? They locked you in a bunker, which kept them alive. Rachel's tone didn't change. If they'd been with me during the attack, they would have tried to help. Brave but untrained assistants would have gotten them killed. The bunker gave me operational freedom. You knew the attack was coming, Morrison said. It wasn't a question. I knew something was coming. The intelligence suggested tonight, but I couldn't be certain. That's why I let them execute their hazing plan. It put them in a predictable location, away from the action. And if you'd been wrong, if the attack hadn't come, for the first time, something that might have been humor flickered in her eyes. Then I'd have spent an uncomfortable night in a bunker. I've had worse. 2,100 hours. While they talked, MPs were searching Derek Mason's quarters. The evidence they found was damning. Not just financial records, but detailed dossiers on every sniper who'd graduated in the past 2 years. Names, photos, operational specialties, current assignments, a shopping list for enemy forces. Mason tried to run. He made it as far as the parking lot before Brad Stevens clotheslined him with textbook precision. Elena Rodriguez, who'd been waiting with a video camera on Brad's advice, captured the whole thing. Mason's subsequent confession, sobbed out while Brad held him down, included names of contacts, payment methods, and future targets. Back in the conference room, Harrison was struggling to process everything. Your death in Kandahar? Staged, Rachel confirmed. The convoy was hit, yes, but I wasn't in it. We'd received intelligence about a mole in the intelligence community. Someone was feeding our movements to the enemy. The only way to find them was to disappear, become someone else. For 3 years? It took that long to trace the network. Mason was just one node. We've identified 17 others across different branches and agencies. She glanced at Morrison. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. And this? Harrison gestured at the room, the base, the entire situation. This was all part of your investigation? The investigation led me here. Mason was getting sloppy, taking bigger risks. We knew he'd have to make a major move soon. I provided the bait, a mysterious recruit with too many skills, too many questions surrounding her. He couldn't resist trying to eliminate me. So, the hazing, the abuse. Expected, calculated for. These men, she meant the death squad, were selected by Mason specifically because of their aggressive tendencies. He knew they'd create chaos, provide cover for whatever he planned. Morrison leaned forward. What's your assessment of them? Rachel considered. Kane has leadership potential buried under ego and insecurity. Redirect his aggression toward legitimate targets and he could be salvaged. Jake and Tommy are followers. They'll conform to whatever culture surrounds them. Rico has accuracy issues stemming from poor trigger discipline, correctable with training. And Stevens demonstrated moral courage under peer pressure, attempted to warn me despite personal risk, showed tactical thinking during the crisis. She paused. Recommend retention and advancement. You're recommending retention for men who abused you? I'm recommending appropriate consequences based on potential utility. Her voice remained emotionless. Kane's reduction to private will teach humility. Kitchen duty for Jake will instill discipline. Tommy and Rico's discharges are necessary. They lack the moral flexibility to adapt, but Steven showed the rarest quality in a soldier, the ability to think independently under pressure. 2,200 hours. They were interrupted by a knock. Master Sergeant Williams entered, his face grave. "Sir, we've completed the shot analysis. It's confirmed. Kandahar Protocol, 773 interval. There's no doubt." He looked at Rachel with something approaching awe. "Ma'am, if I may, Tango 6, August 2018. That was you?" She nodded once. 1,437 yards, uphill through thermal layers. "Saved my squad," his voice roughened. "We never knew who the angel was. Command said it was classified. It was Tuesday." Rachel's tone suggested this was explanation enough. Morrison stood. "Colonel, I need to speak with my wife privately. We'll reconvene at 0600 for the full debrief." Harrison started to protest, then stopped. The politics of this situation were beyond his pay grade. "Of course, sir. Captain Morrison, you're restricted to base pending the investigation." "Understood." She stood as well, and for a moment Harrison saw them together, the general and the ghost. They fit somehow, two weapons honed by the same forge. As they left, Hayes moved closer to Harrison. "Sir, what do we do about the recruits? They all saw her shoot. Videos are probably already circulating." Harrison rubbed his temples. "We'll deal with that tomorrow. Tonight I need a drink, maybe several. 2,300 hours. Rachel and Thomas Morrison sat in his temporary office, the sound of rain providing white noise cover for their conversation. They hadn't touched, hadn't embraced. Their relationship existed in a space beyond conventional affection. "You look tired," he said finally. "It's been a long day." She rolled her shoulder, working out a kink. "I'd forgotten how heavy the TAC 3G-3D8 is. You could have used something lighter." Kane needed to see PS-007. The serial number would circulate, create mythology. Fear is a teaching tool. Thomas almost smiled. "Still the instructor, even undercover." "Especially undercover." She looked out the window at the rain. "How's the team? Wondering when you're coming back?" "I'm not." The words were flat, final. "Phantom 7 is dead. She needs to stay that way." "Rachel." "There are 6 more nodes to investigate. New identity, new approach each time. We've discussed this." "That was before tonight. Your cover's blown." Rachel Thompson's cover is blown. Rebecca Walsh, the accountant, starts her internship at the FBI next week. She turned back to him. "Unless you're pulling me." "You know I won't do that." His jaw tightened. "How many years, Rachel? How many identities before it's enough? Until the network is destroyed, until our people stop dying from betrayal." She met his eyes. "You knew who I was when you married me. I knew a captain with a rifle, not a ghost who dies and resurrects every few years. And same person, different methods." She stood. "I need to prepare for tomorrow. The death squad needs to understand what they witnessed. Do they, or would they be better off believing the legend?" She paused at the door. "Legends create distance. Understanding creates soldiers." Then she was gone, leaving him alone with the rain. 0600 hours, day 2. The conference room was packed. The death squad sat at attention, Brad Stevens with them, despite his technical non-involvement in their activities. Elena Rodriguez was there too, having been added to the roster by special request. Colonel Harrison presided, with General Morrison observing from the corner. Rachel entered last, wearing captain's bars on a freshly pressed uniform. The Medal of Honor ribbon was visible among her decorations, along with awards most of them couldn't identify. She moved to the front of the room without preamble. "Gentlemen, Ms. Rodriguez." She surveyed them with those cold eyes. "You have questions." Kane, reduced to private stripes as of 0500, couldn't meet her gaze. "Ma'am, You hazed a fellow soldier, sabotaged equipment, endangered lives through negligence and cruelty." Her tone was clinical, like discussing weather. "Under normal circumstances, you'd all be facing court-martial." Jake shifted uncomfortably. "Then why aren't we?" "Because these weren't normal circumstances. You were manipulated by Mason, selected specifically for your aggressive tendencies and tribal loyalty. You performed exactly as he predicted. She paused. Which is why you're here instead of in custody. I don't understand, Tommy ventured. You knew what we were doing and let us? I needed Mason to believe his plan was working. Your authentic cruelty sold the deception. She pulled up a presentation on the screen behind her. Photos of dead soldiers, all snipers, all killed in the last 2 years. These operators died because someone sold their identities to hostile forces. Mason was that someone. Your actions last night helped expose him. So we were, unwitting agents? Rico's voice cracked. You were tools. The question now is whether you can be retooled for legitimate purposes. Stevens raised a hand. Ma'am, respectfully, who are you? Really? Rachel looked at Morrison, who nodded. She clicked to the next slide. It showed a younger version of herself in full combat gear, face obscured, but stance unmistakable. Captain Rachel Morrison, formerly Operational Detachment Alpha. Call sign, Phantom 7. Officially killed in action, October 2019. Unofficially investigating internal threats to Special Operations Forces. The room was silent. Then Kane, swallowing his pride, asked, The shooting last night, was that really you? 12 targets in 13 minutes, 47 seconds. All kills confirmed. She clicked again. Aerial footage of her shooting positions. Angles calculated, distances marked. Questions about technique? Elena leaned forward. The 773 interval, what is it? Breathing pattern synchronized with heart rate. 7 seconds target acquisition, 7 seconds hold, 3 seconds reset. It becomes unconscious after sufficient repetition. She demonstrated, dry firing an imaginary rifle. The motion was hypnotic, almost beautiful. Developed in Kandahar, refined through operational necessity. How many? Jake asked quietly. Total? 127 confirmed. Probable additions bring it to 143. She said it without pride or shame. Simple fact. Each one necessary, each one remembered. That silenced them. The weight of those numbers, the reality of what she represented, settled over the room like fog. This wasn't a story or a legend. This was a woman who'd killed more human beings than most soldiers ever saw in combat. Ma'am, Brad spoke carefully, why come back? Why risk exposure? Because good soldiers keep dying. Because the enemy knows our faces before we know theirs. Because someone has to walk in the dark to keep the light safe. She clicked off the presentation. And because I took an oath, same as you. 0700 hours. The formal portion complete, Rachel shifted to instruction mode. The transformation was subtle, but complete, from warrior to teacher in a heartbeat. Kane, stand up. He rose, shoulders hunched with shame. Straighten up. You're a soldier, not a question mark. She waited until his posture improved. Your reduction in rank is effective immediately. You'll serve 6 months as a private, during which time you'll attend every remedial leadership course available. Sergeant Major Williams will be your direct supervisor. Yes, ma'am. You have accuracy and aggression. Properly channeled, these are assets. Improperly channeled, they create the kind of toxic environment that enables traitors like Mason. Do you understand the distinction? I think so, ma'am. Think harder. Lives depend on it. She turned to Jake and Tommy. You two are discharged, effective immediately. Your patterns of following without thinking make you liabilities. However, she paused, civilian contractors are always needed for base support. Apply yourselves there. Rico started to speak, but she cut him off. Dishonorable discharge stands. Your inability to control impulses under pressure is disqualifying. Seek therapy. Learn discipline. Try again in 2 years if you develop character. Finally, she faced Brad. Stevens, you demonstrated moral courage, tactical thinking, and situational awareness. Recommend immediate promotion to specialist. Fast track for Ranger School. She studied him. Your brother would be proud. His eyes filled, but he held composure. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me. You earned it by choosing conscience over comfort. She addressed them all. That's the lesson here. Not that I'm special or that killing makes you worthy, but that choosing right over easy, even when it costs, is what separates soldiers from thugs. Elena raised her hand. What about the others, the network you mentioned? Rachel glanced at Morrison, then back. Classified. But know this, last night was one victory in a longer war. Every base, every unit, every school has potential infiltrators. Your job is to watch, think, and report unusual patterns. Don't create witch hunts, but don't ignore instincts either. 0800 hours. The debrief concluded. The room emptied except for Rachel, Morrison, and Harrison. The colonel looked exhausted, the weight of the night's revelation showing. So what now? He asked. Do we continue the sniper course? Pretend none of this happened? You continue with enhanced screening protocols, Morrison answered. Mason's network will be rolled up quietly. No public trials, no media attention, just problems disappearing. And her? Harrison nodded at Rachel. Rachel Thompson fails the psychological evaluation. Unstable, possibly delusional. Discharged quietly with mental health recommendations. Rachel's tone suggested she'd played this game before. She disappears into civilian life, forgotten. While Rebecca Walsh starts her new job at the FBI, or wherever Phase 3 requires. She stood. Colonel, you have good people here. Trust them. Train them. Don't let another Mason slip through. Harrison stood as well, extending his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. Her grip was firm, calloused, real. Captain Morrison, Phantom 7, whoever you are, he held the handshake. Thank you. Something flickered in her eyes. Just doing my job, sir. 1,400 hours. The aftermath rippled through Fort Bragg like waves from a stone dropped in still water. Videos of the attack and response had leaked despite security measures. The image of a lone sniper on a rooftop, methodically eliminating threats, became instant legend. But the woman herself was already gone. Elena found the note in her locker, written in precise block letters. You have the instincts. Trust them. Train hard. Lead well. R. Brad received a package with no return address. Inside was a photo, his brother in uniform, standing next to a woman whose face was obscured by shadow. On the back, he spoke of you often, honor him by lifting others. Ichdalatreens iarend. Kane discovered his new training schedule included a handwritten edition. Leadership is service, not dominance. Learn the difference or remain small. Someone who knows. The changes came quickly. New security protocols, enhanced background checks, psychological evaluations focused on integrity over aggression. The sniper school's culture shifted, emphasis moving from individual glory to team protection. 3 months later, the court-martial of Derek Mason proceeded in closed session. His testimony revealed 14 other compromised personnel across multiple bases. Each arrest prevented potential ambushes, saved lives that would never know they'd been in danger. Kane, still a private but showing improvement, led a morning PT session. His style had changed, still demanding but no longer cruel. He'd learned the difference between strength and brutality. Brad Stevens graduated Ranger School with honors. His instructor noted exceptional moral courage under pressure, recommending him for special operations selection. He kept the photo of his brother and the mysterious woman in his chest pocket, a reminder of standards to uphold. Elena Rodriguez broke 3 school records and was selected for advanced sniper training. She sometimes felt watched during difficult shots, as if someone was checking her progress. The feeling was comforting rather than creepy. 6 months later, General Morrison stood in Arlington National Cemetery, Section 60. The headstone read, Captain Rachel Morrison, Phantom 7, beloved warrior. Fresh flowers lay beside it, lilies, her favorite. Still visiting? A voice asked behind him. He didn't turn. He'd learned to recognize her presence regardless of appearance. Today she was a blonde, glasses, business suit. Rebecca Walsh, FBI analyst. Someone should. Keep up appearances. She moved beside him, studying her own grave. Any problems? Phase 3 proceeding. 2 more nodes identified in Cyber Command. He paused. How long this time? 6 months minimum. The assistant director trusts Rebecca. She's efficient, quiet, devoted to spreadsheets. A ghost of humor. I've become quite good at PowerPoint. And after? Phase 4. ATF has similar vulnerabilities. She touched the headstone briefly. Then 5, then 6, however many it takes. You could stop. We have others now. Others can't do what I do. She turned to face him. You knew that when you signed the exemption, when you agreed to list me as case IA. I knew a lot of things. Doesn't mean I like them. They stood in silence, two weapons pretending to be people, maintaining a marriage that existed mostly in classified files and brief encounters. I should go, she said finally. Rebecca has a meeting about suspicious financial transfers in the Detroit office. Rachel, he caught her hand as she turned. Be careful. I'm always careful. No, you're always effective. There's a difference. She studied him with those flat, dangerous eyes. Then, surprising them both, she squeezed his hand briefly. I'll try to remember that. 1 year later, the news broke quietly, buried in back pages. FBI announces major anti-corruption operation. 17 arrests, connections to organized crime, and foreign intelligence services. The investigation led by a junior analyst named Rebecca Walsh, who declined all interviews. 2 days after the story ran, Rebecca Walsh's apartment was found empty. No forwarding address, no personal effects beyond basic furniture. The landlord said she'd been a perfect tenant. Quiet, paid on time, never any trouble. Her supervisor at the FBI noted she'd submitted her resignation the day before the arrests, citing family obligations. Her work had been exemplary. They'd be sorry to lose her. Present day. Fort Bragg Sniper School has the highest standards and best safety record in the military. The culture emphasizes teamwork, integrity, and protection of fellow soldiers. Mason's name is never spoken, but his legacy paradoxically lives on in the very safeguards designed to prevent another like him. Sometimes, late at night, guards report seeing a figure on Building 31's roof, just a shadow, there and gone, watching over the base. The old-timers call it Phantom Watch, dismissing it as legend. But ammunition records show something odd. Every few months, 14 rounds of 338 Lapua Magnum go missing from inventory. Exactly 14. The same number Phantom 7 used the night the range became a battlefield. Colonel Harrison, now retired, keeps a photo on his desk. It shows a small woman in oversized ACUs, covered in mud, being mocked by larger soldiers. Most visitors assume it's a reminder about hazing prevention. They're half right. Every hunter becomes hunted eventually, he sometimes tells the young officers. The question is whether you'll recognize the predator before they strike. In a hotel room in Seattle, a woman with short red hair and green eyes studies financial records from a major defense contractor. The patterns are subtle but present. Money flowing to unexpected places, information following the money. Her phone buzzes, a text from a blocked number. Phase 7 confirmed, assets in place. She deletes the message and returns to her spreadsheets. Tomorrow, Catherine Martinez starts her new job in accounting. She's nervous, eager to please, completely forgettable. In her luggage, wrapped in civilian clothes, is a small metal case. Inside, 14 rounds of 338 Lapua Magnum, just in case. Because sometimes the range becomes a battlefield. Sometimes the hunter becomes the hunted. And sometimes the dead don't stay buried. Sometimes they just reload.